Great. Well, welcome everybody. I'll call this meeting of the Pleasanton Unified School District's Community Board meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. on September 14th. I'll go ahead and call roll. Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee Maher.
Here.
Trustee McCaughey.
Here.
Trustee Carrion.
Here.
Right, we have a full house.
Trustee Biani.
And oh my goodness, how many times am I going to have to do that? Sorry, Trustee Biani, we're going to have a practice session, just you and me. Trustee Biani.
Here.
Wonderful, welcome. All right, I hope you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you don't have a flag in front of you, you can look at my screen, or I believe Mr. Hernandez also has a flag on his Zoom screen. So let's go ahead and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this is, for those of you who are new to our district, this is something that we did pre-pandemic, but we did it in person. And it's a little bit different format. We do have an agenda this evening, and as Mr. Gannon mentioned, it is a special board meeting, so public comment is limited due to the Brown Act on a special board meeting to items on the agenda. So what we're going to be doing this evening is the board members will not be interacting with each other. What we'll be doing is listening to you as you ask questions of staff about the agenda items, and staff responds to those questions. And it will hopefully hear a good dialogue. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Hagler.
Thank you, President Larson. So next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about our organizational work plan first, and then identify the 5 organizational goals. And then later in the meeting, we're going to do an update on our current COVID response. And so just so you're familiar, the organizational work plan is a critical document that's used throughout the organization to create a systemic alignment of the work from all the way from the classrooms up through the boardroom. And so it guides our work throughout the year, and it informs the board, but also you as community members, on the actions that we are engaged in as a staff to address the annual goals.
Dr. Hagler,
yes.
I apologize. We're a little bit out of order. I forgot to ask for approval of the agenda, so I just wanted to take an opportunity to interrupt you, as I do enjoy that. If I have a motion to approve the agenda type, please.
I will move approval of our agenda.
I'll second it.
All right, I think I
one of
heard
us.
Trustee Carrion first. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda this evening. Trustee Miller.
Aye.
McCaughey.
Aye.
Maher.
Aye.
Carrion.
Aye.
And Larson, aye. Thank you, Dr. Hagman. I'm sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, okay. So the organizational work plan actually is a document that we work on throughout the year. And you can find it on the district's website. It's linked on the front page, but it's also linked on the superintendent's page. And it's a document that's designed really to make sure that our actions are purposeful and strategic and aligned throughout the organization. So that as we work through improving our functions as a district, that it's a continuous improvement process. So it's initially posted on the district's website each year on September 30th. The mid-year update occurs on January 30th, and the annual update occurs on May 30th. And that document and the results of the document inform the evaluation process of the superintendent, but also the executive cabinet. And the goals are also aligned to the work in our LCAP. And incorporated this year are board objectives. And so that's the next phase of our work, is bringing in the goals of the board, or the actions of the board, to support the work. And again, to promote alignment across the organization from the governance team throughout the rest of the organization. So what we're going to do next is we're going to step through the 5 organizational goals, and each goal is going to be covered by one of the cabinet members. We'll give you a little bit of detail. We're only going to spend, 3 or 5 minutes on each one of the goals, if that long. Our goal is actually to get to the questions and answers as quickly as we can and spend the majority of our time in that process. I just want to remind you once again that the way that you submit a question is through the process that Mr. Gannon talked about at the beginning of this call. Patrick, if you want to drop the link, if the chat's available, it'd be great if you could drop the link there for folks. If not, you can find it on the PowerPoint, which can be downloaded along with the agenda for our meeting tonight. Okie doke. So let's start off first. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Janelle Woodward, who is our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning.
Thank you, Dr. Haglund, and good evening, President Larson, trustees, Superintendent Haglund, Cabinet, and the Pleasanton community. Happy to be here this evening to talk about organizational goal 1. So our first goal is to leverage personalized learning strategies and growth-based assessments to increase achievement and identify opportunity gaps. Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about what this goal means for us. So personalized learning is an educational approach, and it aims to customize learning for each student's strengths, for their needs, for their skills, and for their interests. We often refer to this as differentiated instruction. Every student needs to get what they need in order to grow, and personalized learning is for all students. So some of the key initiatives underway to meet this goal include, for our students in elementary and in middle school, we are expanding our training and support for teachers and administrators in the use of the MAP growth assessments. This assessment helps us to identify what students know, what they are ready to learn next, and to be able to monitor progress throughout the year. And we are also equipping our administrators with the tools and our teachers to interpret the related reports, and we'll be sharing that with our parent community. And this way, our parent community can understand the instructional strategies and increase their understanding of the MAP growth assessment. We are also finalizing the selection of essential standards in grades K through 12. We know that it's very important that we're all aligned on what the most important standards are for every student to be able to know and demonstrate. In addition, we are spending time working on grading for equity, in which we look at grades through a different lens that is more equitable, and this will hopefully in the future result in positive changes to our policies. And then lastly, we're working on professional development with our teachers and our administrators in order to ensure that every teacher is equipped to be able to provide English language development for our English language learners. We often refer to them as emerging bilingual students. And so we're working on that. And also we have a great focus on early literacy so that every student learns to read and to write while they're still young. Thank you.
Would you like me to go, Dr. Haglund? You're on mute, sir.
Turning it over to you, Mr.
Yes,
Dialazzo.
please. Yes, please. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you. I wanted to be sure I was on. So good evening, President Larson, Dr. Haglund, board, community, and cabinet and staff. So I have the opportunity to talk about organizational goal 2. And this one is strengthen intervention and support structures to effectively improve the physical, mental, and social wellness of students, families, and staff. And so I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services. So this particular goal is really well within our range here in the division to talk about. So I'm really excited to tell you many of the things that we've developed and have implemented in this past year and in previous years regarding this particular goal. So I want to talk about strategies, resources, the websites that we have available to the community, trainings that we've developed, professional development for our staff, and curriculum. So I'll start with that. So in regards to social emotional curriculum, some of you may have heard of some of these. I'll mention for our preschool and TK grades, we have a curriculum called Kimochis. For our K-5 or elementary grades, we have a curriculum called Second Step. And for our older students, middle school and high school students, we have a curriculum called Character Strong. And so those three different sets of curriculum really focus in on our social emotional learning, how we support students in how they build community, and also how they support each other regarding their behavior and their social emotional health. We're super proud of that curriculum and how the staff and the administrators really tie it into their everyday work. Some of you may have heard of PBIS, that is our Positive Behavioral Intervention and Supports, and that framework is established at all of our schools, and we use that framework to support the aspects of social emotional learning as well. In terms of resources, I'm just so proud of the staff, specifically our social workers and our wellness coordinators, as well as Monica Wharton, who is our student support program specialist. And they have developed a wellness website that just has so much incredible information, trainings, something called Ask a Counselor. So really working with our students and providing them tools of how to access resources. We also have a partnership with Access Community Health, which is a health agency in our community, and they provide trainings and counseling supports as well. I do want to mention that we have an anonymous tip line. I don't know if some of you are familiar with that, but we have a tip line that's really available to anybody in our Pleasanton Unified School District community, staff or students, that they can access a way to report something that they may have seen, protecting one of their colleagues or friends, and it's anonymous. So they can report that in. We follow up on that daily, and then we provide information to the school sites and so that the administrators can follow up with any particular student that may be in need of support. Other resources, we have a partnership or a contract with an agency called Care Solace. And some of you may have heard of that agency. It is an online concierge service that essentially will take any questions or referrals from staff, parents, families, students, and they can connect stakeholders to agencies that would support any of their counseling needs. So they work with insurance, and they really have been a great service, and we've had pretty good use of that service throughout the years that we've had Care Solace with us. I think we're in our fourth year with that service. Lastly, I want to talk about some staff video presentations that our social workers have put together, specifically on bullying prevention, suicide prevention, drug and tobacco use prevention videos. We've used those videos with our staff and with our students to provide them again with other resources that they can access for themselves or students that they may know in need. Lastly, parent and education is also a big component of how we support this particular goal. And the social workers website has several presentations about parent education topics. There's also a calendar of events on that website that's available to PUSD staff and students and families that they can access. So there's a lot to talk about in how we support this particular goal, but I will stop there and turn it over to our next presenter, Mr. Sheikh Holfami.
Actually, it's going to come back to me.
Sorry about that, Dr. Hagen.
It's okay. So thank you, Mr. Dialazzo, and Dr. Woodward, both comprehensive reports. I appreciate your clarity. So our organizational goal number 3 is really about addressing systematic barriers to equity and inclusion. If you've been watching any of our recent board meetings, you've seen that we've been talking a whole lot about equity. And it's a conversation that's been going on in this district for some time. It's not a new conversation, but really this is allowing this work and focusing on this goal is ensuring that we're digging deep and trying to identify those barriers, which could be related to policy, but they could also be related to practices that are in place within the district, and working to strategically deconstruct those barriers so that we are addressing the opportunity and the achievement gaps that are existent here amongst our student population. And so that's important work. And then also ensuring that we're including our students with special needs in the least restrictive educational environment that's possible. They have a right to be in our core academic program as long as they can do so with appropriate supports. And so it's important that we look at ways that the system may be inhibiting that process and correct those issues, whether they're related to a policy or just related to a simple practice that's going on. So we also have a comprehensive coordinated early intervening services plan, which is related to work that's been required of the district by the state of California, because we have evidence of significant disproportionality for certain student subgroups with relation to special education services, but also discipline. And so it's important that we look at what might be those root causes for some of that disproportionality, and address again the policy or the practices that are leading to more students of color being assigned to special education classrooms or disciplinary actions, as an example. So that's the CC, we call that the CCEIS plan. And we've talked about that several times at board meetings. We also have an equity plan that's looking at closing achievement and opportunity gaps for our students by addressing, again, the root causes of equity related issues that might be inhibiting forward motion for students in certain subgroups. And again, that could be structured by policy, but it also could be issues that are simply related to practice. And finally, I just want to say that it's not just about correcting policy. It's not just about correcting practice. It's about learning how to celebrate the uniqueness of each of our students. And that includes celebrating the things that are important to them as a part of their culture and the community that they're raised in. And so we need to increase awareness of the various cultures within the district, increase appreciation for those things, and help our students learn that those resources, their cultural resources that they bring to the table, are assets. They're not deficits. Those are things that they bring to the table that make our conversations much richer and engaging. And so we just want to make sure that we're doing all of the work, not just the policy work related to that goal number 3. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hernandez, who will address goal number 4.
Thank you. Good evening, President Larson, Superintendent Haglund, Board of Trustees, Executive Cabinet, staffing community. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about goal number 4, which states promote a professional culture that values collaboration and supports efforts to recruit, develop, and retain a diverse and highly qualified workforce. So we are constantly looking for a not only diverse workforce, but a qualified workforce. We go out to job fairs at this point, simply because of COVID, there are now remote job fairs to be able to recruit. We've had a recruitment fair for classified staff not too long ago, last month on the 29th. We continue to seek the best to be able to serve our community. Once we bring our staff into Pleasanton, we do have what we've now established are academies. We do have an academy for administrators to be able to develop. We are opening up a leadership academy for our certificated staff to be able to look into the possibility of growth within our profession in the administrative field, or in counseling, or in psychology, or any of the number of other fields that our education institution provides. We also have already for the last 2 years provided an academy for our classified staff. Those members of our classified staff that choose to explore other pathways besides the current position that they have in. So we have encouraged our classified staff to get trained to be a custodian, to train to be able to be in maintenance and grounds. We are expanding that to include paraprofessionals for this school year as well. We are constantly looking for the best in our community and outwards to be able to enrich, as Dr. Haglund has said, to bring the diverse voice and culture within our school district. It only benefits our students and it benefits our school district. Thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Haglund.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. And for goal number 5, I'd like to ask Mr. Ahmad Sheikh Waslami to provide some insight.
Thank you, David. Key to everything we do is communication, both to our external customers, which is the greater community in Pleasanton, and our internal customers, which is our staff, our parents, and our students. Communication requires both active listening, providing information and data, transparency, dialogue, and responsiveness. And to that goal, we have created a wide range of communication tools, such as our eConnect, which goes out from the district, social media postings. We also have our communications, extensive communications that come from our school sites, our bulletin to the boards. We've also been utilizing new communications tools such as Zoom, which we're using right now. We have the Let's Talk, which is an interactive way of quickly responding to common questions, as well as Parent Square. To create opportunities for engagement, in addition to our regular and special board meetings on certain topics, we've created the town halls such as these, and there's going to be a series of them throughout the year to engage the community. During the spring, we have the annual stakeholder survey. Throughout the year, we have our regular LCAC and DLAC meetings, which help guide our LCAP process and document. The board has also created a variety of committees that are available to the community to engage in, and that's the finance, which is our budget and audit committee, our facilities, curriculum and instruction. And in addition, we have the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee that oversees the Measure I-1 program, and those are all available to the community to attend. For our internal stakeholders, we engage with our PTAs. We have our parent community council, our classified employee community council, and our faculty community council. We have strengthened our public relations team with Patrick Gannon, and we have a new communication and community relation assistant as well. And we've also leveraged our local media, such as the Pleasanton Weekly, to make sure to get the information out. These systems have been designed to be substantive and sustained, and to provide that continuous feedback loop, which is communication, understanding, engagement, and responsiveness. So I hope that covers most of that one, David.
Thank you, Ahmad. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit and move on to an update on our COVID response. And for that, I'm going to invite both Mr. D'Alazzo and Mrs. Kelly French to the conversation.
All right, thank you, Dr. Haglund. And we want to talk about our response since the beginning of this year. And I smile because it's been quite a response. We've been really busy as a COVID response team. And I'll talk a little bit about who's on that team, but I first want to talk about really the goal of this team is twofold. We want to keep our PUSD community safe. That's number one goal. And of course, part of that is to keep our students in school. In a recent Bay Area health officer, or multiple counties in the Bay Area public health officers recently had a press release, and they said, you will have cases in your schools. There's no question. And so we've definitely experienced our COVID-19 positive cases, both of students and staff. But with that, with this goal of keeping students in school, we've implemented some strategies to hopefully meet that goal. And I feel that we've done a pretty good job. And that is with our team And that team is led by Ms. Kelly French, our Coordinator 1, Pandemic Manager, and I'll give her an opportunity to speak later if you have questions, but I'll go over this slide. So the first bullet there is, it's really been a team effort, and it expands on the concept of team, and I'm talking about all the staff, all the administrators, the teachers, the clerical staff, classified, MOT, our maintenance, operations, transportation, everybody's pitched in to implement the guidelines and the procedures and protocols that we have for COVID response so that we can keep our community safe and students in school. So I really just want to say that first and thank all of the stakeholders. And sorry, I missed the families, the parents are crucial to this in terms of helping us provide those mitigation efforts to keep kids again in school. We have a really good relationship with Alameda County Public Health Department and the California Department of Public Health. Ms. French has a direct line to the liaisons with both of those public health departments. And so we call them regularly to ask questions. There is a weekly call that we are able to ask questions and provide, and then therefore provide guidance and relay that information through our own FAQs and our COVID safety plans back to the staff and families here in Pleasanton. At the beginning of the school year, we had 3 people on the COVID response team, and that was Kelly and 2 other staff members. And very quickly, we realized we needed more. We needed more help. We needed more staff members. And through collaboration with our human resources department, our business department, and of course, our superintendent, we were able to now add more people to that team. And we have now 15 people to help us contact, trace, and test students throughout the district. So we're very fortunate to have a bigger group to provide COVID response. We have done a lot of contact tracing and also follow up with that testing. We've been able to test students on something that we call modified quarantine and also shortened quarantine. We could talk a little bit more about that if there are questions about it, but essentially when students are considered a close contact to a positive case, they are eligible through a decision-making or decision tree process of us establishing whether or not they would be eligible for a modified quarantine or shortened quarantine process. And then with that would come a rapid antigen test. And so we've tested over 1,200 students since the start of the year. And again, with the goal of keeping them in school. And so very fortunate to have this team and be able to respond accordingly based on county and state public health guidelines. Next slide. All right, so in terms of next steps, we obviously want to continue that partnership with the county and the state. We are again participating in any information gathering outreach that they have to us as a school district, and we continue to participate, and then therefore we will update our guidelines regularly. The next big step here for us is to adhere to the state and governor's order regarding the employee requirement to either provide a proof of vaccination, or if not, then that employee would have to participate in a weekly COVID-19 testing. And so that mandate needs to be implemented on or before October 15th. And so we've been working with our human resources department to gather the vaccination status of all of our employees and then determine who would then be eligible if we don't have their proof of vaccination to participate in a weekly testing program. And that is also again led by Ms. French and the COVID response team. All of this information is actually gathered in a resource page on our website. And that web page, if you click on our website and look for COVID-19, you will see all of the resources that we have available to you, including a dashboard and information on an FAQ and the safety plan. So please visit that website if you have any additional questions. And I will stop there. So thank you, Dr. Haglund.
Right, next slide, Patrick. So that's the end of our presentation. Board President Larson, we're ready to take questions. Want to remind members of the public that because this is a special board meeting, not just a town hall, we need people to fill out the comment card, which Patrick, I believe, put a link to in the chat. And so currently I'm only seeing one question. So we're going to give you a few minutes to get in there and submit questions. Patrick's just posted that link in the chat. But I'm going to turn it over to you, President Larson.
For the questions and comments section,
Yeah, maybe we can start if any board members have any questions. How's that?
I think that would work. So tonight, do any of the board members, including our newest trustee, Trustee Bayani, have any questions for staff tonight? I do not see any hands either in the videos or on the screen. So I'm going to say no. We were interested to hear what the public has to say tonight.
All right, Mr. Gannon, you want to call our questioner, allow her to speak.
Sure. So public comment comes from Prasanna, and Prasanna, I'm going to give you speaking privileges. Thanks for submitting a question. Whenever you're ready, go ahead. I can also read the question if we're still experiencing technical difficulties.
Why don't you go ahead and do that, Patrick?
All right, so question is regarding COVID-19 response. The question is, what is the plan when a specific school site has increasing COVID cases? Do we plan to go to hybrid at any point? Can we also give preference for kids within the school zone to get back to their assigned schools if they go to the virtual option?
Mr. D'Alazzo.
Okay, I'll try to answer it. Maybe Kelly, Ms. French, you can help me. So I referenced the press release from the Bay Area counties public health officers. And from that press release, my understanding is that the counties really have no plans or do not want to close schools. And in fact, it's the opposite. They're very supportive that the Bay Area counties have open schools and we are in person. So with that said, we are fortunately, just today, I looked at the CDC guidelines in regards to the transmission rate, and we are going down here in Alameda County, and we actually just transitioned from a high transmission county to a substantial transmission county, which is really good news, and we'll have to evaluate what that means for our protocols. But I mentioned that because with that said, I think the hybrid option at this point is probably not the road that we're going to go down. And so we're focused on keeping our schools open. I said that in my presentation earlier about COVID response, is to keep kids in school, even if there's a case, that we provide all the resources and all the tools, possible strategies that we have in order to keep kids in school so that we don't have to close our schools and have to face that option. So that's what I have. Kelly or Dr. Hagen or anybody else, if you want to add more to that question.
So what I will add is that the legislature has not created an option that allows for remote learning the way we did it last year. And so they have doubled down just recently in AB 167, which is passed by both houses of the legislature and is sitting on the governor's desk for signature, and said that if there are needs to keep kids away from school, that the vehicle for doing so is independent study. And we have an independent study program in the school district. That's the Pleasanton Virtual Academy that is taught by Pleasanton teachers using the Pleasanton curriculum pathways. And so that's the mechanism for students if they need to, if the families want them to be remote. In cases where there's short term, so it's an isolation period of less than 15 days, we would use short-term independent study to ensure that those students stay engaged with their classrooms. But Kelly, I don't know if you want to add anything on top of that.
I just want to add that in the county meetings that we have, they've made it very clear, as Assistant Superintendent Dialazo mentioned, that there's no plans for closing down schools. In fact, just the opposite. They're encouraging school districts to use the mitigation strategies that they put in place, such as testing and allowing students to be on modified quarantine and shortened quarantine in order to keep kids in school as much as possible. They want families to know that if your kids are sick, they should stay home and they should seek testing at outside facilities. But if they're not sick, school is one of the safest places that they can be. We have a lot of mitigation layers between masking, hand sanitizing, testing, and our contact tracing practices. And I don't see it going in that direction at all, that there'll be school closures.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Patrick, next question.
Well, I think they
Hey,
had a
Dave,
second.
there's another half to that
Yeah.
question regarding students coming off virtual back to the classroom in their home school.
Thank you for catching that, Ed.
Right, so if they are on, so there's two. So Dr. Hagelin mentioned short-term independent studies, so I'll start with that. That's probably the easier one. So that's limited in the number of days that students would be out. Typically, it's within that framework of the quarantine period. So yes, the students are still enrolled in their same class. They would then return to their same class, to their same school. The Pleasanton Virtual Academy, which is the long-term independent study program, it's for 15 days or longer. So what that means is we essentially are moving the kids into that program and out of their schools. And so I'll talk a little bit about elementary and middle, which is different from the high school. So elementary students in Virtual Academy, there's no guarantee that that space would be held for that student at their home school. Same for middle school. We have a few more options for the secondary programs. We are not promising that space or those specific slots would be reserved, so to speak, if that's the question, for students to return to their home school. But we have more options at the secondary level, meaning there's potentially more space, kids going back. We only have 2 comprehensive high schools and 1 continuation high school. I don't foresee a problem with kids returning back at those levels, but elementary, I just want to be clear that we're not reserving specific spots for kids that go into Virtual Academy, which is the long-term independent study program, but we will try our best to do so. We will try our best to move kids back into their home school. If their teacher has space in their particular classroom, we will try our best to do that. We're just not able to promise that that space would be held in elementary.
A different way to say that, maybe, Ed, would be to say that that would be our hope and intent, but we can't guarantee it.
There you go.
Next question, Patrick. Did we get the full question answered, Trustee Maher?
It sounded like it. I think that the important thing that you said is that every effort is made, and certainly if there's no room in that particular classroom, that's school, and then it kind of goes out from there. So it's not a set path rule as such, but classroom size does dictate that.
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay, Patrick.
All right, we got a, we actually had three comment requests, but I think they're all from the same individual. So we'll go ahead and call on you once. I'll go ahead and give you speaking privileges. And this next question or comment comes from Juhi.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for taking my call. Sorry, it might be easier with the music in the background if you want to just read my questions, Patrick.
Sure, happy to.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
I love it. I love the piano lessons. Just a second. All right. Okay. It looks like they're all related to, most are related to Pleasanton Virtual Academy. So go in order, and we can always go back if we need to backtrack or repeat questions. So why is it taking so long to be placed in Pleasanton Virtual Academy? The website says it will take 5 days. Which teachers are teaching which grades? Which grades have wait lists, and how long are they? What is the process for handling the wait list? When will my child be placed in a Pleasanton Virtual Academy class? I would like my child to do remote learning during the winter months. When should I apply to Pleasanton Virtual Academy? It seems like Pleasanton Virtual Academy doesn't have enough teachers. Where will the Pleasanton Virtual Academy teachers come from? What if I try Pleasanton Virtual Academy and it doesn't work for my child? Will I be able to return to my home school in the next academic year? If I register for Pleasanton Virtual Academy, will there be an option to back out if and when the class is ready for my child? The website is confusing. What are the current expectations for asynchronous versus synchronous learning at Pleasanton Virtual Academy?
All right, Mr. Dialazzo.
All right, I got it. I remembered it all. No. All right, Patrick, you might have to help me.
Yes,
I think I answered one of those questions regarding returning back from independent study, so I won't go over that again. We will try our best to get kids back into their same classrooms at their regular schools, but that's not a guarantee. We were frankly surprised at the response for Virtual Academy, and so we had planned for a certain number of kids, and we were trying to hire teachers over the summer to start the program. And then it just accelerated in just the past month. And so we're probably, I don't have it in front of me, about 400 kids now, or maybe a little bit more, in the long-term independent study Virtual Academy program. And so we just have had a difficult time keeping up with the hiring of the teachers. And so there was a time where there was a waiting list, but as of last week, I believe we were able to hire 2 more teachers to essentially eliminate the waiting list. If there is a waiting list at this time, again, I don't have the real-time data, that list should be pretty small. And so our Director of Educational Options, who is not on this call, Heather Pereira, has been working very hard to hire teachers, hire staff, and get kids who want to be in Virtual Academy enrolled in a timely manner. The question about returning, independent study is a voluntary program. And so, especially in regards to the AB 130, is that correct, Dr. Hagelin? Rules, students can return to their schools and leave independent study and go back to their programs, classrooms, their schools. And that has to happen within that 5-day window. So we have every opportunity for kids to go back to their regular schools from independent study, and we need to make that happen in a timely manner. What other questions, Patrick, maybe that I missed?
Ed, if we can just, let's do two things. Number one, I want to revisit the rights to return because she kind of asked two different questions. One was, at the end of the year, if we decide it doesn't work, can I go back to my home school? And the answer to that is absolutely. You just apply for that transfer to do that. The issue that Ed was addressing was there was language within AB 130 that said, if a parent chooses to put their child in independent study, but then chooses to remove them from independent study, the district within 5 days has to allow that child to return to a seat-based learning program. It doesn't say that they has to return to the school they left. It just says that they have to go back to a seat-based program. So in both cases, parents have the option to move back into a traditional seat-based program. That's rules in independent study, as Mr. D'Alonso inferred. In terms of the rest of the question, what I'd really like to do, Ed, is to ask for you to take that question from Patrick and work with Heather and provide an update in the bulletin so that, because she's probably not the only parent that has similar questions. And so it might help us in answering more questions than just this one tonight.
Sounds good. I will do that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Patrick, next question.
All right, so to be fair to Ed, I stopped at Pleasanton Virtual Academy just because there were about 10 in that one comment. The next question is around plans for handling indoor lunches during rain or inclement weather. And given the situation that happened in Marin County, the parents would like to know if their teachers are vaccinated. My understanding, this is not covered as a HIPAA privacy issue. Will this information be available?
So
sounds like,
let's break that into a couple of pieces. Maybe Dr. Woodward, if you can address the rainy day schedule for lunches. Ed, you can address any COVID related items, and then Julio, you can speak to the vaccination issue in the governor's order.
Absolutely. So I can tell you that right now what we are doing is being very proactive and careful during lunch times for our students, especially at the middle school and the elementary school, where we know that students haven't had the opportunity to be vaccinated. As a result, the students do sit in assigned seats. There are seating charts. The principals monitor that, and any changes that might happen in the day also have to have seating charts. So fortunately or unfortunately, we don't get a lot of rain in Pleasanton. And so we hope that we have as many bright sunny days as possible so that our students can eat outside, because I think we all agree that that is the best place for them to eat. If they do have to eat inside, there are several options that we have. One option is that students could eat in a staggered schedule so that there's more space in between students while they're eating, and we limit any possible exposure. Spacing would be important if students have their masks off inside. Another option is that if it's covered outside, the students might still be able to eat outside. And so we are working with our administrators to be able to determine what some of those possibilities might be in a rainy situation. We've had a couple of situations right now where students have had to eat inside, and the schools have been able to work it out so that it was very small groups eating at one time. And that would be our goal, is reduce the number of students eating together and have the students continue to sit with the same students that they sit at during lunchtime so that we remain stable in the groupings. I hope that helps to answer that part of the question. And I'll pass it back to Dr. Haglund.
Mr. D'Alonso, do you want to add anything?
no, I think Dr. Woodward explained it well. That I would have said the same thing. It's about the seating charts and having kids group as much as possible when they're indoors. So thank you, Dr. Woodward.
All right, and Mr. Hernandez, if you would address the governor's order and where we're at in that process.
Thank you, Dr. Haglund. Good evening, everybody. So we do have 2,251 employees registered in our escape system, employees slash substitutes as well as contractors within our school district. Out of the 2,251 employees, 1,617 have indicated and submitted their vaccination records. There are 55 employees who have indicated that they are not, nor will they be vaccinated. Now, those 55 are not just for political reasons. There are also medical reasons and religious objection. So those individuals will be subjected to a testing cadence once a week per the executive order of the governor. And then there are 570 other employees who have not yet indicated one way or the other. The bulk of those are substitutes and or contractors and or coaches. So they're not necessarily individuals who are day-to-day working with our students. Again, we are having our plan to be executed for volunteers as well for October 15th, which is when the governor's order needs to be executed. We are developing a process by which our volunteers also will have to indicate their vaccination status before they could work with our students. There are street pathways for them, one being the just walk in to volunteer using the Raptor system to check for the sexual offender clearance. The other is to more long-term volunteering, meaning that they are working in a project with the school inside a classroom that requires not the Raptor clearance, but going to the Pleasanton Police Department to get a clearance there. And then the other one is overnight trips, which right now we are not having due to the COVID circumstance. But all of those will require also a vaccination or proof of vaccination effective October 15th. So we are well on our way in establishing these for our employees, and now moving forward for our volunteers, meeting the guidelines of the executive order that the governor issued that becomes effective October 15th. Thank you, Dr. Haglund.
All right,
So
thank you.
real quick. So I do think one of the part of her question is that would it be known if your teacher has not gotten the vaccine and is one of those who has to test?
So again, they're not protected by HIPAA. Should a parent wish to make an inquiry, we will honor that inquiry. At this point, we will not be making it a public list of all of our employees. But again, if the inquiry comes in on an individual basis, we will most definitely honor that.
And speaking of lunch, can I just say that we have ordered lunch tables, and so that the kids can spread out during the lunchtime.
A lot of them.
Okay,
And
hate to-
we are looking for people who want to
yeah,
as CNS workers. So if you got a couple hours in the middle of the day and you want to come help us serve some lunches, that would help us open more windows and speed up the food distribution services. So sorry, President Larson, for speaking over you.
that's all right. I appreciate the clarifications on the questions that might have been missed by staff, but remember, board members, we're not to be making comments to each other about things that we're hearing this evening, as those individual items are not agendized. So again, appreciate though the catches when staff has questions been lengthy and we need to cover an item. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and so the community knows I don't know that we spoke this at the beginning. We are writing down all the questions that are being asked in a different document, and we will be responding to them separately. They will then be posted on the website. So if we don't get to each little bit of the question that you answer, I apologize, but I promise that we will provide that information soon. All right, next question, Patrick.
Our next question comes from Saima, and I will give you speaking privileges. If you'd like to go off of mute to ask your question, otherwise I can read it on your behalf.
No, I'll go ahead and ask question. Thank you so much, Patrick. Good evening, everybody. I have a quick question regarding COVID vaccination requirements as students become eligible for COVID vaccination. So currently 12 and over are eligible for the vaccination. Will PUSD require students to be vaccinated and show proof, just like how they are asking teachers to be vaccinated? And you know, LAUSD has required 12 and over to be showing the proof of vaccination. So what are your thoughts on requiring PUSD students to be vaccinated?
Well, I'm going to jump in there first, Ed, and then Ed and Kelly, you guys can jump in, but there's a couple of things I'd like to say first. Number one is we're not quite there yet. But one of the reasons why we don't need to be quite there yet is because our 12 to 17-year-olds are knocking it out of the park in terms of their vaccination status. So currently, I believe that we're at about 96% of 12 to 18-year-olds. In other words, students who are eligible for the vaccination in the city of Pleasanton in our zip codes are reporting, the county is reporting that we're at 96%, I believe the number is. It might have gone up this past week. For the percentage of students in that age group who have at least had one of the shots of the vaccine. The number for fully vaccinated, Kelly, do you know what that is this week? I didn't look this week.
About 80%, Dr. Haglund, maybe a little bit more.
So the,
fully vaccinated 12 to 18.
right, and what we've been trying to do is just to strongly encourage multiple times families that are eligible to get the vaccine, not just for themselves, but because it's a protective measure for others. Obviously, that decision is going to come to us at some point in time. But like I said, neither the county nor we are at that place quite yet. Ed, Kelly, did you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to say, when we do our contact tracing, we do ask and request, so it's not required, but we ask about the vaccination status, again, as part of our questions for students as we contact trace. And Kelly, you have the details of how we do that, so I'll turn it over to you, but I just wanted to add that piece that, again, not required, but we do request information because it helps us in our decision as to how to quarantine particular students.
Sure, I'd be happy to elaborate on case investigation. So when a positive case of COVID-19 is reported to a school site, we immediately spring into action with a case investigation. Case investigation requires a conversation, obviously, with depending on the age, the student or the parents and guardians of that student or staff member, if the case may be. And the way it works is we look at what the really important date is when symptoms started. And in the absence of symptoms, we're looking at when the specimen was collected for the test that was taken. And then if there are symptoms, we go back 2 days from the onset of symptoms, and that's considered the infectious period. And so then we're doing a very, very thorough investigation of the activities of that student or staff member within the infectious period. We just had Labor Day weekend. And so if we had a symptom onset maybe on Tuesday, September 7th, the infectious period would have encompassed the weekend. And so we wouldn't have had to do case investigation for that Monday and Sunday when students were not in school. But we do look at any days that students were in school. The case investigation includes transportation to and from school, any extracurricular activities that are school-based. And the key to the case investigation is those seating charts and tracking who students are with. I know I could talk your ears off all night about this, but and I'm getting away from the question about vaccination status, but at the secondary level, when many of our students are vaccinated, that's the first question that we ask. If they've been identified as a close contact, we want to know their vaccination status because our response is going to change if they are vaccinated. If they're unvaccinated, then we get into further questions of whether or not they were, the student was perhaps eating lunch and so their masks were down versus a classroom exposure when masks are on, because that will dictate whether the student is modified quarantine, which means that they continue going to school along with so long as they undergo twice weekly testing, which we can provide, or if they're excluded from campus because they were exposed with their mask down. And that definition of close contact has not changed from what it was in the spring. It is within 6 feet of a COVID positive case for cumulatively 15 minutes or longer, regardless of mask wearing. So again, I know I went really off topic there, but I also want to say these protocols are very complicated. I mean, just for one case investigation, there's 6 different scenarios of the response. And for those of you that want more information, there is a new infographic on the COVID-19 webpage of the Pleasanton Unified School District. We tried to make it as simple as possible and colorful. And so I encourage you to take a look at that to get more familiar with these protocols.
Thank you, Kelly. All right, Patrick, next question.
All right, we just got another question from Miss Laura Hall. So Laura, if you'd like, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I was just wondering why our district requires masks to be worn outside when neighboring districts who are also in the same county don't require that. I'm just curious what the thinking is behind that.
Right, I could try this one, Dr. Haglund.
Thank you.
So we actually thought long and hard about this particular mitigation effort. And what tipped us to the point of requiring the mask outdoors was the CDC's identifying Alameda County as a high transmission county. And in that same language with the CDC, districts who are high transmission, they highly recommend the use of masks outdoors, in particular with crowded settings and crowded venues or crowded events. And so when we thought about that, we said to ourselves, schools are crowded venues, and schools and school events, recess, lunch are crowded. And so that's why we made that decision. I know recently there have been some other districts in the county who are now moving towards the masking of outdoors, but here in Pleasanton, that's why we made that decision. And hopefully that makes sense to the community, and want to thank the community for following those efforts, because I've seen it myself in the community where kids are wearing their masks.
Will that be revisited another time as far as guidelines dropping or lessening?
Absolutely. And so I mentioned earlier that I looked at the CDC transmission rates today, and it is dropping. And so we will step back, reevaluate our protocol and procedures regarding all aspects of mitigation, and definitely masking will be one. So thank you for your patience and cooperation with the community so that we can examine it carefully and then make some decisions regarding our protocols moving forward.
Thank you.
Assistant Superintendent DiLazzo, if it's okay, I just want to add to that the contact tracing piece, and that hopefully it's become clear during this community meeting that Pleasanton Unified School District's focus is keeping kids in school. And one of the ways we can keep kids in school is taking advantage of the option to have kids on modified quarantine. And so when kids are masked outdoors, it allows for us to have kids on modified quarantine versus excluding them from school in a full or shortened quarantine when there's an exposure. So, once our younger students have the opportunity to be vaccinated, that's another point in time where we'll definitely be reevaluating our policies regarding masking.
All right, Patrick, next question.
We actually, I'm just going to double check to verify.
let's assume that the piano lesson's still going on. And maybe you could just read the comment.
I would be happy to. So I'm trying to keep up with my email as it's coming in. So I'll read the comment first. Thank you for all of your hard work. The COVID numbers have been really good so far. The measures PUSD has taken does seem to be working. And the next comment is, I fully support wearing masks at school, indoors and outdoors as much as possible to keep the kids safe. Don't loosen up masking too soon, especially when kids are young and unvaccinated. Thank you. And then one question that just came in. Do you have any information about the upcoming vaccination for younger kids? I assume that means students under the age of 12 that we are all waiting for. I know we are waiting for that.
We are all waiting with great anticipation for that. And so the most recent information that I've received from Dr. Moss is that it looks like those vaccinations will arrive in the fall. And we've got a couple of months of fall left. There had been some hopeful anticipation that it would come in at the end of September, but it's looking more now that it's going to be later in the fall, maybe end of October, beginning of November, but before winter. So I did make him to tell me what the difference was between fall and winter, so I would have some understanding of it. But we're hoping in the next several weeks that will be released, and that opportunity will be made available to the younger students as well.
And David, I just want to add, from what I understand, it's for students age 6 to 11. Is that correct?
That is correct. So that won't help our TK and some of our kinder kids. So we'll have to continue with protocols at those age groups. Patrick, I see one more question there. Did you see that one?
And Dr. Haglund, could you please identify who Dr. Moss is?
I'm sorry, Dr. Moss is the Public Health Director for the Alameda County Department of Public Health. He's really tall and a very nice guy. And he's been very helpful to us during this whole past 18 months.
All right, I did see that. Did see that question come through. I'm just trying to pull it up. I actually believe that was the question that was submitted. Not.
So I'll go ahead and read the question that I see that I don't think we've touched yet. I heard some schools had to shut down classrooms. Why did that happen? What did the kids do when the classroom was closed? Mr. D'Alonzo.
Actually, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. French. You could speak specifically, Kelly, about the classrooms that were impacted by COVID, where the majority of the class had to be quarantined. So I'm going to use that language instead of class closure. And then the second part of that question, we could talk about too in terms of what the kids did. So Kelly.
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about that. In the beginning of the school year, we had really emphasized seating charts in the classroom, but we hadn't emphasized seating charts at lunch. It's putting together seating charts at lunch is a big lift for our site administrators. And what happened at the beginning of the year is that students were grouped for lunch by class, but not necessarily, we didn't have good tracking on who exactly they were sitting with. And this happened with a couple classrooms that in the lower grades. So at the upper grades we can rely on our students to do good reporting. Hey, who'd you eat lunch with? And they can report back to us. But at the younger grades, we have to rely on good tracking and seating charts. And so it did take a little bit of time to get that in place. So initially out of the gate, we did have a couple of COVID-19 exposures that took place at lunch. And those students where we had to quarantine a whole classroom was not necessarily because we had definitive information that every student was in close contact, but they were potential contacts. So we have changed our procedures at the school sites. And because of the great effort from our site administrators, we have definitely seen a correlation in a decline in the number of students that have had to be on either a shortened or full quarantine or a modified quarantine in the classroom.
So if I could just add that while I appreciate our site administrators, it was the teachers that had to put the seating charts together. And so they're the ones that did the hard work and that we have an appreciation for.
And to add to that, we talked about short-term independent study contracts. And so when the kids are quarantined for any period of time more than 3 days, then teachers do provide contracts. We want to continue to provide education to our students, make sure that they have work to complete, and then hopefully kids complete it and get credit for the time they're on that quarantine, therefore on the short-term independent study contracts.
All right, Patrick, anything else?
We did just get one more question if we'd like to take it. With testing protocols, our testing protocol by primary health uses the Abbott Binax Now rapid test. According to the CDC study, this test shows sensitivity of 36% in asymptomatic cases, meaning 64%, or approximately 3 in 5 of positive cases receive a negative result, or false negative. To compensate for lower accuracy, Abbott recommends taking 2 tests within 36 hours. As sold by CVS, for example. Is there a reason why we only use a single Abbott test now?
Ms. French.
Yes, this is definitely a Kelly French question. CDPH testing program uses the Binax Now rapid antigen testing. I believe that the statistics that Patrick has read off are for the at-home testing kits that are that you can purchase over the counter at CVS, Walgreens, any of those. We do not accept at-home testing for return to school, whether it's symptoms, exposure. It has to be an observed laboratory-based test. And for symptoms, it can only be a PCR or a molecular test. And for exposures, it can be a rapid antigen test, but it still must be a laboratory-based test. It can't be an at-home test. And the difference is the folks that we've hired, the testing and contact tracing, have all gone through a pretty rigorous training put on by the CDPH. It's a hands-on training with CDPH. And that way there is more validity to the test, and we have fewer false readings, whether it's positive or negative. Dr. Carol Glazier, who I have the pleasure of being in meetings with on a weekly basis, says that for the observed tests for Binax Now, so the program that we're running here in Pleasanton Unified School District, that she can count on one hand the number of false positives. So when we started this program, we were enrolled in this program. We've been enrolled in this program since May. And when we started this program, there was a confirmatory PCR that was required for any positive Binax Now test. However, because of the data that they have collected, that confirmatory PCR test for an observed laboratory-based test is no longer required. And so when we get a positive test on our Binax Now, that is an indicator of active infection. The Binax Now tests are actually catching people in their most contagious period, which is why different tests are allowed in different situations. So with symptoms, we want a PCR test because it has a higher sensitivity. It's going to pick up a lower viral load, where the Binax Now rapid test is going to pick up the higher viral load. So when we get a positive Binax Now under the conditions that we're testing, it's pretty clear that is an indicator of active infection. Again, that is different from the same testing kit that is performed at home. So, I'd be happy to, if anyone has any further questions on this, I'm happy to expand. Hopefully I answered that appropriately. Oh, I do want to add in that as part of our enrollment process, Pleasanton Unified School District can add to its resume that we are now what's called a CLIA waiver school district, which is the CLIA waiver is what laboratories, it's a certification that all laboratories have. So we are official laboratory.
Well done.
Ditto. Great job, Kelly.
Patrick, do we have any other questions?
No, I think Kelly just dropped the mic.
So then are there any other questions from the board members to staff? Or comments?
I have one question. It's probably for the testing, Miss French. So if I have a child who has a symptom of the, runny nose or something of that sort, are parents able to use school services for testing, or only if a child has been identified in close contact or potential close contact of a COVID case?
So at this time, we are only testing using the Binax Now rapid antigen testing kits for students who have been exposed at school, and it's the testing is by appointment only, and it's by an invitation only. For modified students, we are doing the testing on site at the school sites, and for those on a shortened quarantine who had a school exposure, we're testing at our central testing site. It's very minimal, the number of students that we're testing that fall into that category. That's taking place thanks to a partnership with the city of Pleasanton, who's been amazing. We're testing at the Pleasanton Nature House. That's become our central testing hub. So if you go to the Pleasanton Unified School District website, there is a testing resource that has the outside facilities where you can seek testing. We don't allow students or staff members with symptoms to be on our campuses. We still have the daily health screener in place to kind of help identify folks who are symptomatic, and it gives instructions. If you don't pass the screener, it says don't come on campus, and notify your supervisor or the attendance line, whatever the case may be. So we've put together a resource list for people to get. You can always call your healthcare provider, but if that isn't an option for you, there are facilities, and I am just going to say it here publicly. It's on our document. We have had a lot, and I'm talking a lot of issues with there's 2 pop-up clinics over at the Stone Ridge Mall, and we've had trouble with people being charged a lot of money, getting the wrong test, getting maybe the correct test, but then the wrong report. It's just been really one of the reports is titled molecular diagnostics. So people think it's a molecular test, but then it's a rapid antigen test. So we are trying to get the message out for people to avoid those locations for school-based testing. And the places that we're recommending are Stanford Valley Care in Livermore. For anyone 10 and up, they have a no appointment necessary drive-through testing for PCR testing. And then the other one that has been fantastic is City Health. They have locations in Dublin and Livermore. They have appointments available. They have a lot of appointments available. And our team actually went out and talked to both of those facilities. And the City Health one, there's no age limit, so anyone can go there. And we've been told that although appointments are required, if you don't get an appointment, if you register and maybe you have an appointment for Thursday, but it's Wednesday, and if you show up and you say, oh, my appointment's tomorrow, they'll take you. So just get in the system, register, and those places have been really, really reliable. And we plan to, we probably not going to venture into symptomatic testing because we just don't have places on our campuses. And so that will still be outside facilities, but we are working on expanding some of our testing options, just so you guys know.
And that was actually going to be my question. We've received a lot of questions from the community about whether or not and if not, why not doing any sort of regular testing cadence of students. Asymptomatic, just general, prophylactic testing.
So thank you, Ms. French. I really appreciate the response because as President Larson indicated, we have been asked by parents or oops, I'm sorry, in regards to options. So thank you very much.
So Ed, do you want to address President Larson's question?
Yes. So as we've talked about expanding our operation regarding testing, those are the options that we're looking at, Trustee Larson. So student testing, staff testing, testing of our students who are participants of athletics and band. There's some specific guidelines and rules with those student groups. So Ms. French and her team and myself, we've been talking about how we can expand those operations. So as soon as we can get that information together, we will definitely provide it to the board and to the community, those expansion efforts. But yes, it is our goal to expand our testing options for the community.
That address your question, Trustee Larson?
Did, thank you.
Good.
Any other questions from the board members? All right, Dr. Haglund, do you have any closing comments?
No, I just appreciate the community members who came out tonight. This is part of our organizational work plan is to have these meetings, 4 of them throughout the year. So we did conduct this first one virtually. We're hopeful that the next one will be in person, as will the final 2 throughout the rest of the year. So with that, I'll turn it back over to President Larson.
Great. Yes, we do. Honestly, it's just a really wonderful opportunity to be with folks and let you, have access to all of the staff who can answer your questions. And so I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to do this in person again very soon. I do want to mention 2 more upcoming meetings and also remind our board members. On Tuesday, the 21st, we have a special board meeting, and this is the first of 4 of our equity workshops to continue the work that Dr. Haglund mentioned in the organizational work plan around reducing systemic barriers in our school system. And that's at 5:30. It will be on Zoom. And again, it's Tuesday, the 21st. And then on Thursday, the 23rd, we have our regular business meeting, regular board meeting with open session beginning at 6 p.m. on the 23rd. So you stay tuned. There'll be some more information, and we appreciate everybody coming out. I looked at the participant list. We had quite a few folks on the line tonight listening, and I'm really glad to see you virtually. With that, I'll say goodnight. It's 7:27.